The Last Stand. The story opens with the Galactic Council's final defense fleet scattered across the outer rim of the Centauri system. Admiral Kane stands on the bridge of the dying battlecruiser Defiance, watching as enemy ships tear through their remaining forces like paper. The alien invaders, known as the Devourers, have swept across 12 star systems in just 3 months, consuming entire planets and leaving nothing but empty space behind. Captain Mills reports the grim statistics through crackling communications. Only 47 human ships remain from the original fleet of 3,000. The other allied species have either fled or been completely destroyed. Earth went silent 6 weeks ago after the Devourers' main fleet reached the Sol system. Everyone assumes humanity's homeworld has fallen. The Devourers' ships are massive, organic-looking vessels that seem to grow rather than being built. Their hulls pulse with a sickly green light, and they move through space like predatory fish. Their leader, the hive-mind entity known as the Prime Devourer, broadcasts its final ultimatum across all frequencies: surrender now, and the remaining species will be consumed quickly. Resist, and they will suffer as their worlds burn. As Kane prepares to give the order for a final, desperate charge, Lieutenant Torres at the communications station picks up something impossible: a single ship signature approaching from the direction of Earth. The signature is human, but it's unlike anything in their databases. It's massive, easily dwarfing even the largest Devourer vessels, and it's moving at speeds that should be impossible for something so large. The ship emerges from hyperspace like a dark angel of death. Its hull is midnight black, covered in armor, plating that seems to absorb light itself. Strange symbols glow along its sides, and weapon ports dot its surface like the eyes of some ancient predator. The other human ships fall silent as they recognize the designation that appears on their screens: Reaper. The Reaper was Earth's most classified project, a ship so secret that even the military's highest ranks only knew rumors. Built in the outer asteroid belt using technology that humanity wasn't supposed to possess, it was designed for one purpose: to end wars before they could truly begin. The ship had vanished during its final test run 3 years ago, taking its crew of volunteers. With it, everyone assumed it had been destroyed in some catastrophic accident, but now it had returned, and its timing couldn't be more perfect. The Devourers pause their advance, clearly confused by the arrival of this unknown vessel. The Prime Devourer attempts to communicate with the Reaper, offering the same ultimatum it had given the others. The response comes not in words, but in action. The Reaper fires its first weapon, a beam of pure energy that cuts through space like a sword of light. It strikes the nearest Devourer ship, a massive creature vessel the size of a city, and simply erases it from existence. No explosion, no debris, just empty space where the enemy ship had been moments before. The remaining Devourers recoil in shock, their organic hulls pulsing with what might be fear. Kane realizes that humanity's darkest secret has become its greatest hope. The Reaper wasn't just a ship, it was a statement, a declaration that Earth might fall, its colonies might burn, and its people might die. But humanity would never go quietly into the night. They would fight, and they would make their enemies pay a price so terrible that the galaxy would remember it for 1,000 years. The communication channel crackles to life, and a voice emerges from the Reaper. It's human, but changed somehow, carrying an authority that makes even the hardened Admiral Kane straighten his shoulders. This is Commander Cross of the Earth Defense Ship Reaper. All human vessels withdraw to minimum safe distance. We're about to remind these creatures why they should have left our species alone. As the surviving human ships pull back, Kane watches the Reaper position itself between the Devourers and the retreat route. The alien fleet, numbering in the hundreds, begins to advance with renewed aggression. They had swept across the galaxy, unopposed, devouring everything in their path. They were not used to prey that fought back, and they certainly weren't prepared for what humanity had built in its darkest hour. The Reaper powers up its weapon systems, and space itself seems to hold its breath. The war that had seemed lost just moments ago was about to take a very different turn. Earth's most feared ship had arrived, and the Devourers were about to learn why humanity had earned its reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous species. The battle for the survival of all sentient life was about to begin. The Reaper's fury. Reaper moved through space with the grace of a predator, its massive hull cutting through the void, as if it belonged there. Commander Cross stood in the ship's bridge, a chamber that seemed more like a temple than a command center. The walls were lined with displays showing tactical information, but they also showed something else: the faces of every human colony that had fallen to the Devourers. Lieutenant Park, the ship's tactical officer, reported the enemy's movement. "Sir, they're forming attack formations. Count shows 437 Devourer vessels, ranging from destroyer class to their largest bioships. They're not backing down." Cross nodded grimly. The Devourers had never faced real resistance before. Every species they had encountered had either fled or been overwhelmed within hours. They didn't understand that humanity was different. They didn't understand that humans had a saying: "If you want peace, prepare for war." The Reaper had been prepared for war since the day it was conceived. Every system on the ship had been designed with one goal in mind: to face impossible odds and emerge victorious. The crew of 300 volunteers had known they might never return home when they accepted their assignments. They had made their peace with that possibility long ago, Engineer Blake reported from the engine room. "Quantum reactors are at full power, sir. All weapon systems are charged and ready. The new armor plating is responding perfectly to enemy sensors. They can't get accurate readings on us. The armor was humanity's greatest breakthrough, developed from studying crashed alien vessels over the past century. It didn't just deflect enemy attacks. It absorbed and redirected energy, making the Reaper stronger with every shot it took. The more the Devourers attacked, the more dangerous the human ship would become." The Prime Devourer's fleet began its assault with a coordinated strike from 50 ships at once. Beams of energy and swarms of biomissiles streaked across space toward the Reaper. The human ship didn't attempt to dodge or hide. Instead, it flew directly into the storm of weapons fire, its hull glowing as it absorbed the impact. Then the Reaper returned fire, and the Devourers learned what true fury looked like. The main cannon, a weapon that drew power directly from the ship's quantum core, fired a stream of particles that moved at near light speed. It struck the lead Devourer vessel and continued through it, hitting the ship behind it. And then the one behind that. 7 enemy vessels died in the first shot, but the Reaper was just getting started. Weapons ports along its hull opened like blooming flowers, each one revealing a different instrument of destruction. Plasma torpedoes streaked toward enemy formations, each one guided by an artificial intelligence that had been taught to think like a human warrior. Kinetic railguns fired solid projectiles at speeds that turned them into miniature stars, burning through enemy hulls like hot knives through butter. The Devourers tried to adapt, changing their attack patterns and bringing their largest vessels forward. These were the ships that had destroyed entire worlds, biomechanical monsters the size of small moons. They opened fire with weapons that had cracked planets, energy beams that could boil oceans. The Reaper took the hits without slowing down. Its adaptive armor converted the enemy's own weapons into fuel for its systems. The ship grew brighter, its hull beginning to glow with absorbed energy. Cross watched the power readings climb beyond anything the ship had achieved in testing. They were entering uncharted territory, but the Reaper had been built for this moment. "Target their command ship," Cross ordered. "Show them what happens when they threaten Earth." The Reaper turned toward the largest Devourer vessel, a massive creature that pulsed with malevolent intelligence. This was the Prime Devourer itself, the mind that had orchestrated the destruction of countless worlds. It was time for it to face judgment. The human ship's main weapon charged for a full 10 seconds, drawing power from every reactor, every absorbed energy blast, every ounce of fury that humanity had built into its greatest creation. When it fired, the beam was so bright that it could be seen from the other side of the solar system. The Prime Devourer's ship tried to defend itself, bringing up energy shields and firing every weapon it possessed. Nothing worked. The Reaper's attack cut through the defenses like they weren't there and struck the alien vessel at its core. For a moment, the massive ship hung in space, its hull cracking like an egg. Then it exploded in a fireball that outshone the system's sun. The remaining Devourers fell back in shock and fear. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something that could not be consumed, could not be destroyed, could not be defeated. They had met humanity's answer to their aggression, and they were learning that some prey was more dangerous than any predator. The tide turns. The destruction of the Prime Devourer sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The remaining bioships retreated to a safer distance, their hulls pulsing with what could only be described as panic. For creatures that had never known defeat, the sight of their most powerful vessel being utterly destroyed was beyond comprehension. Commander Cross watched the tactical display as the Devourers regrouped. "They're learning," he said to his crew. "They won't underestimate us again." The alien fleet began to change its approach. Instead of the aggressive swarm tactics they had used before, they formed defensive formations and started coordinating their attacks with military precision. The surviving Devourer commanders were adapting quickly, studying the Reaper's movements and weapons patterns. From the retreating human fleet, Admiral Kane watched the battle with growing amazement. The Reaper had single-handedly turned the tide of a war that had seemed hopeless just hours before. But he also recognized the danger. Even with its advanced technology, the human ship was still outnumbered nearly 400 to 1. "Sir," reported Captain Mills from the Defiance, "the Devourers are calling in reinforcements. Long-range sensors show at least 2 more fleets approaching from the outer system. They'll be here within the hour." Kane felt his heart sink. The Reaper was incredible, but it couldn't fight the entire Devourer armada alone. He opened a channel. "To the mysterious ship. Commander Cross, you need to retreat. You've done more than enough. Fall back to Earth and prepare the final defenses." Cross's voice came back calm and steady. "Respectfully, Admiral, Earth doesn't need defending anymore. We've learned something during our time away. The Devourers aren't invincible. They're just bullies who've never been punched back." The Reaper began moving again, but this time it wasn't attacking. Instead, it was broadcasting something on all frequencies. The transmission was unlike anything the human fleet had heard before. It wasn't words or images, but pure information, streaming directly into their ship computers. "What is that?" Kane asked his communications officer. "Sir, it's technical specifications, weapon designs, defensive systems, tactical data. The Reaper is sharing its technology with us." Across the human fleet, ships that had been barely holding together began to change. Emergency repair systems activated, powered by new energy sources that shouldn't have been possible. Weapons that had been depleted found fresh ammunition appearing in their magazines. Hull breaches sealed themselves as smart materials flowed to place. But the most dramatic change was in the ship's offensive capabilities. The Reaper's data included instructions for converting standard human weapons into something far more deadly. Plasma cannons that had been firing simple energy. Bolts now launched guided projectiles that could track and destroy multiple targets. Missile systems began producing warheads that could phase through enemy shields. "This is impossible," breathed Captain Mills, as he watched his ship's weapon systems upgrade themselves. "How did they develop this technology?" The answer came from the Reaper itself. Commander Cross opened a general channel to the entire human fleet. 3 years ago, we didn't disappear in an accident. We were sent on a mission to the edge of known space. Earth's scientists had detected something there, something that the Devourers had missed in their advance across the galaxy. The tactical display showed a new image, the wreckage of an ancient alien vessel, far larger and more advanced than anything the Devourers possessed. It had been floating in deep space for millions of years, waiting for someone to find it. "We found the remains of the species that first fought the Devourers," Cross continued. "They called themselves the Builders, and they had been fighting this war for 1,000 years before they fell. But they left behind something important, a complete database of Devourer weaknesses and the technology to exploit them." The Reaper had spent 3 years studying the Builder technology. learning how to combine it with human engineering. The result was a ship that wasn't just advanced, it was specifically designed to hunt and destroy devourers. Every weapon, every defensive system, every tactical program had been optimized for this single purpose. Now the Reaper was sharing that knowledge with the entire human fleet. Ships that had been ready to die in a final desperate charge were becoming instruments of precise destruction. The Devourers had swept across the galaxy by overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology. But humanity had just leveled the playing field. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane," came the voice over the fleet communications. "Form attack formations. We're going to show these creatures what happens when they threaten Earth. Today, we end their reign of terror." The human fleet began to advance, no longer the desperate survivors of a dying cause, but the armed fist of a species that had just remembered why it was feared throughout the galaxy. The Devourers were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't any single ship or technology. It was their refusal to surrender. The hunter becomes the hunted. The reinforced human fleet moved through space with deadly purpose. What had been 47 dying ships was now a coordinated war machine, each vessel upgraded with builder technology and burning with the desire for revenge. The Devourers, for the first time in their existence, found themselves on the defensive. Commander Cross coordinated the attack from the Reaper's bridge. The ship's quantum computers had analyzed thousands of years of builder tactical data, identifying the perfect strategy for each situation. "Execute Pattern 7, he ordered. "Target their biomanufacturing ships first. Cut off their ability to reproduce." The human fleet split into 3 groups, each one moving to attack a different section of the Devourer formation. The aliens tried to respond with their usual swarming tactics, but the upgraded human ships were ready for them. Energy shields that had been failing now absorbed enemy fire and converted it into power for their own weapons. Hulls that had been cracking under pressure now repaired themselves faster than the Devourers could damage them. Lieutenant Park reported from the tactical station. "Sir, the enemy is trying to retreat. They're calling for their reinforcement fleets to fall back and regroup." "Don't let them," Cross replied. "The Builder's data shows that Devourers become exponentially more dangerous when they have time to adapt. We need to keep them off balance." The Reaper demonstrated this principle by unleashing a new weapon, a gravity bomb that created a temporary black hole in the middle of the enemy formation. 12 Devourer ships were pulled into the gravitational anomaly and crushed out of existence. The remaining aliens scattered in panic, their formation completely broken. Admiral Kane watched from the Defiance as his ships tore through the enemy ranks. The plasma cannons were working perfectly, each shot guided by artificial intelligence that had learned to think like a human predator. The Devourers' organic hulls, which had seemed so resistant to conventional weapons, were being sliced apart by beams that attacked them at the molecular level. "This is incredible," Captain Mills reported. "We're not just winning, we're dominating them. They can't adapt fast enough to our new weapons." But Cross knew the real test was still coming. The Devourer reinforcements were approaching, and they would be prepared for what they had seen. The alien species had conquered most of the galaxy by learning from their defeats and adapting their tactics. This battle was just the beginning. The first reinforcement fleet arrived just as the human ships finished destroying the last of the original attackers. These new Devourers were different, their hulls showing modifications that hadn't been there before. They had been watching the battle and changing their ships in real time, trying to counter the human advantages. "They're faster now," reported Engineer Blake from the Reaper's engine room. "And their shields are operating on different frequencies. They're trying to neutralize our new weapons." Cross smiled grimly. "Then it's time to show them that humans don't just rely on technology. All ships, switch to Pattern 12. Let's see how they handle chaos." Pattern 12 was pure human ingenuity, a battle plan that abandoned all conventional military doctrine in favor of unpredictable aggression. The human fleet began moving in seemingly random patterns, attacking from unexpected angles and using tactics that no computer could predict. They fought like pirates, like rebels, like a species that had learned warfare through centuries of fighting each other. The Devourers, despite their adaptations, couldn't keep up. Their hive-mind mentality was perfect for coordinated attacks, but it made them vulnerable to the kind of individual creativity that humans specialized in. Each human ship captain began improvising, using their upgraded weapons in ways that even the builder technology hadn't anticipated. Captain Mills found that his plasma torpedoes could be overcharged to create chain reactions in enemy formations. Another captain discovered that the new hull plating could be used as a weapon, ramming into Devourer ships and tearing them apart with the ship's own armor. The aliens were being overwhelmed not just by superior technology, but by the sheer unpredictability of human tactics. The second reinforcement fleet arrived to find the first one in complete disarray. These Devourers were even more modified, their hulls bristling with new weapons and defenses. But they made a critical mistake. They assumed that the human fleet would be weakened by the previous battles. Instead, they found ships that were stronger than ever. The builder technology included self-repair systems that grew more efficient with each battle, and adaptive shields that learned from every enemy attack. The human fleet wasn't just surviving the war, it was evolving through it, becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. As the third wave of reinforcements appeared on the sensors, Cross opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is where we make our stand," he announced. "Not just for Earth, not just for humanity, but for every species that ever dared to resist. These creatures. Today we teach the galaxy that the age of the Devourers is over. The final battle was about to begin. The galaxy remembers. The third wave of Devourer reinforcements brought with them something the humans had never seen before. The Great Devourer itself, a bioship so massive it had its own gravity field. This was the creature that had devoured the homeworlds of a dozen species, a living weapon that had been growing and evolving for thousands of years. Commander Cross studied the massive vessel on his tactical display. It was easily 10 times the size of the Reaper, its hull covered in weapons that pulsed with malevolent life. "All ships maintain distance," he ordered. "That thing is a planet killer. We need to be smart about this." The Great Devourer's voice echoed across all frequencies, a sound like grinding metal mixed with dying screams. "Humans," it spoke, "you have impressed us. Your species shows potential. Surrender now, and we will consume you last. You will have the honor of watching your galaxy die before you join it." Admiral Kane's response came immediately. "This is Admiral Kane of the Earth Defense Force. Our answer is the same as it's always been. No." The Great Devourer's attack began with a weapon that had destroyed entire star systems, a beam of energy that could crack planets lanced out toward the human fleet. But the Reaper was ready. The ship moved directly into the path of the beam, its adaptive armor absorbing the incredible energies and converting them into power for its own systems. "All ships, execute final protocol," Cross ordered. "It's time to end this war." The final protocol was humanity's last gift from the Builders, a way to link all human ships into a single network, combining their power and intelligence into something greater than the sum of its parts. The 47 ships of the human fleet became neurons in a vast electronic brain, their upgraded computers working together to solve the ultimate puzzle: how to kill something that had been unkillable for millennia. The answer came in the form of a coordinated attack unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Every human ship fired simultaneously, their weapons synchronized to create interference patterns in space itself. The Great Devourer's shields, which had withstood the combined fire of entire fleets, began to collapse under the precisely calculated assault. But the ancient creature was far from helpless. It began to change, its hull flowing like liquid as it adapted to the human attack. Bioweapons emerged from its surface, living missiles that could think and learn. The creature was trying to do what it had always done: evolve to overcome its enemies. This time, it was too late. The human fleet had learned from the Builders' mistakes. Instead of trying to destroy the Great Devourer with brute force, they began to reprogram it. The builder technology included viral programs that could infect devourer biosystems, turning their own evolution against them. The great devourer screamed as its own body began to rebel. Systems that had functioned for millennia started to shut down. Weapons that had destroyed planets began to fire on the creature's own hull. The being that had consumed countless worlds was being consumed from within by its own biology. "It's working," reported Lieutenant Park. "The viral programs are spreading through their entire fleet network. All the Devourer ships are being affected." Across the battlefield, the remaining enemy vessels began to shut down one by one. The hive mind that had connected them for so long was turning into a network of death, spreading the human virus to every ship, every creature, every part of the Devourer species. The Great Devourer made one final attempt to escape, trying to retreat into hyperspace, but the Reaper was waiting. The ship's main weapon, charged with the combined power of the entire human fleet, fired a beam that followed the creature into hyperspace itself and destroyed it completely. The silence that followed was deafening. After months of constant battle, the war was over. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years was extinct, destroyed by the combined fury of humanity and the wisdom of the builders. Cross opened a channel to the surviving fleets of other species, many of whom had been hiding in distant systems, waiting for the end. "This is Commander Cross of the Earth Defense Ship Reaper. The Devourer threat has been eliminated. The galaxy is free." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Transmissions poured in from hundreds of worlds, voices raised in celebration and gratitude. The species that had fled in terror were returning, ready to rebuild what had been lost. But Cross knew the real victory wasn't in the destruction of the Devourers. It was in what humanity had learned about itself. They had faced extinction and responded not with despair, but with ingenuity. They had found a way to turn certain defeat into absolute victory. As the Reaper began its journey back to Earth, Cross looked out at the stars and smiled. The galaxy would remember this day. It would remember that when the darkness came, when hope seemed lost, humanity had stood up and said, "Not today." The enemy had thought they were gone. They had been wrong. And the galaxy would never forget the price of underestimating the human spirit.